Ethan's POV. I sat in the study at home with my phone watching the new trending videos while Reese and Caden hovered around me. We should watch that. Everyone around school says it's hilarious. Reese insisted. They had been bothering me to watch the video of Irene getting embarrassed ever since we got back from school. I wonder if it's that fun, I muttered, and Caden knelt next to me. We the bosses in school should know what's going on, don't you think? He remarked, scrolling upwards to search for the video of Irene I had skipped earlier. It started playing, and for a reason I felt annoyed. Wow, so she can actually dress up like that? Caden asked, staring at the screen fixedly. Serves her right. Can't believe she wore my hairpin to meet another guy, Reese remarked, and Caden chuckled. Would she wear it to see you? Why would she see you? Geez, and she doesn't know she's being filmed? Caden blurted out, still staring at the screen. Stress, if she had kissed him, it would be worse, I remarked, and they nodded as we watched the kids burst out from their hiding places, laughing and mocking her as they all began to film her. They zoomed in on her face, and I saw her lower lip trembling. Even though her eyes held little shock and a bit of defiance, I could still see the embarrassment on her face, and it annoyed me. So this was the reason she was all smiles last night, because she thought someone had asked her out. Reese pointed out. I wonder what this feels like. I can't imagine it at all, but it surely can't be good. Oh my, what is she doing? Caden suddenly exploded in laughter as Irene protested, saying she had a date and was going to show them all. Did she have a clue what she was getting into? Everyone would be waiting for her to show up with a date. Where would she get a date? No one would want to go with her. She just got herself into a real mess. Irene is really something, Reese commented with a smile. Speaking of Irene, where is she? He added. Probably trying not to come home early to avoid us. Caden suggested, and the both of them burst into laughter. The video was all over the school, and there were lots of negative comments all waiting to see her date. It was like she just made a show of her own. A show everyone was looking forward to watching. Rene's POV. I had tried really hard not to cry throughout the day, and it had been easy. I told myself I would buy myself a date somewhere outside school and that things would be fine, but as I and Fran shopped for her Halloween dress, I realized it was hopeless. I didn't even have money for a dress. Where would I see the money to buy a guy? Would he even want to go with me? I suddenly plopped down on the bench and fat tears dropped down my cheeks. Why was it fun? Why was bullying someone fun? Why was dashing their hopes fun? Why? For once, I had thought someone actually really wanted to be with me. I had been happy, and it just felt like the whole Braden thing was happening all over again. Was there a law saying fat girls couldn't get dates? Why couldn't I just get a date? Why was everyone else experiencing the thrill of being asked out by someone handsome and I was not? Everyone had laughed and snickered at me all through the day. Even the teachers had sneaker glances at me and smiled secretly. I had suddenly become popular, and I had made a fool of myself. Where was I go get a date? Even a girl won't dress up as a guy to go on a date with me if I paid her a lot. Well, there was only one option. Miss Halloween night and skip school for a week. Irene, please don't cry. I really don't know what to say, but you really shouldn't just run your mouth like that. From the onset, you should have known it was a lie. Let's be truthful. That's the only way you'll feel better. Hurt faster and heal faster. No one would ask you. No one. She pressed as she sat next to me. She was trying to help. It was the truth. I knew the truth, but I didn't need her telling me again. Why did you lie saying you had a date? You just complicated things. If I tell you it'll be fine, then I'm a liar and a bad friend. And you know what? You're not helping. I told her truthfully and stood up. Irene, the dresses, she shrieked, getting to her feet as I stormed away from her. I don't have any money for it. Buy your dress and leave me out of it. I snapped as I pushed open the door of the store. Tears blinded my eyes, and it felt like an arrow was stuck in my heart. It hurt so bad. Why was I just so pathetic? Why did I lie? Someone like me should have done away with pride a long time ago. Why did I have to make a bigger mess for myself? Nice one, Irene. I'm most eager to see your date, Reese said the moment I showed up in the living room. I'm sorry I'm late. I apologized, keeping my gaze on the ground. Rest, we've eaten. Ethan told me, and I nodded, still staring at the floor because I didn't want tears to run down my face. I ran to my room and started to cry hard. Minutes later, my door was pushed open and Caden came in. I immediately wiped my tears with the back of my hand and sniffed. "You made me laugh today. Some nerve you've got there. Check it out. Don't know if it'll fit, though. It was made in a rush," he said as he threw a light netty material on me. I pulled it off and down came layers and layers of clothing. What's this for?" I croaked out. "It's a Mina costume." "Mina?" I asked, still in confusion. "Can't you tell? You're going as Mina to Halloween night because I'll be Dracula." Bang! When the impossible becomes possible, that's where the impossibly handsome Caden asks a oversized Urini out for Halloween. Urine's pove. I stared at him like he was insane, and he watched me with a brow raised. "I'm Mina?" I asked, wondering if he drank or inhaled something that made him not know what he was doing. "If you're going to be such a questionnaire, I can easily hand out the—" "No, geez. Caden, are you really asking me out to Halloween night?" I asked, at the top of my voice as I got to my feet. He slapped his forehead and sighed. "Me, Urine? I got on the school news today, and I'm a laughingstock, but you want me to go with you?" I asked, looking at myself all over, then suddenly I took steps backward. "You're not tricking me, are you?" I suddenly said and looked around. Probably Reese was somewhere with a camera. "Why is it so hard to ask you out?" he asked, and my cheeks turned red with heat. "Why?" I finally asked, breathlessly. "Someone was disrespectful enough to call out my name during the video," he replied, still leaning against the door and suddenly looking like a hero to me. "She's all dressed up. Maybe Caden would notice her." That was what the girl had said. "That's why? That's why you're taking me to Halloween with you?" I asked, trying to be sure. "I do what I want, and I'm one who likes giving surprises. Let's see what a pretty gown can make of you on Halloween," he remarked, looking at me from head to toe before turning away. "If you're doubtful, you can always find another date." "No, it's all good," I called out to him. "Please don't tell anyone. I like surprises too," I shouted, but wasn't sure if he heard me. When I was sure he was long gone, I started to jump. Jumping was a hard thing for me to do, so you can guess my excitement. I jumped on the bed, which creaked and groaned dangerously underneath my weight. Caden asked me out. Caden is my date. I repeated those words over and over, staring at the ceiling with a wide smile of disbelief. I ended up giggling, screaming, and pushing the sheets into my mouth to muffle the sound. I could totally imagine them all staring in shock when I walked in with Caden. Not just anyone, it was Caden! Oh my God! This had better not be a prank, I told myself as I used my hand as a hand fan. All through the night, I didn't sleep. Of course, Caden was the type who didn't care what anyone said. The brothers didn't care, actually. They could get tons of slim girls whenever they wanted, so what was Halloween with one fat girl, and of course, he'd be a hot topic if he took me along. Everyone would have hopes, and more girls would pine for him. Yes, he had something to gain from it. But when had he forced a poor designer into making this in hours? I looked at the dress in the mirror, anxious to pull it on, because I didn't want a case where I'd ruin it by mistake. I was going to wear my hairpin from Reese on Halloween, and I was going to look splendid. I let out a muffled scream once again by pushing my fist into my mouth. That night, I danced, tiptoed around the house, and stuffed myself with food until I finally slept around the early hours of the morning. When my alarm rang, I personally turned it off and slept in. By the time I snapped to my senses, I was really late. I jumped to the bathroom, took my bath, and dressed up prettily, although I didn't use the hairpin. It was being saved for Halloween night. My head was up high as I walked into school, and even though jeers followed me, it only made my smile wider, because I knew I had a date, and he was a date they couldn't hope to have. He was a date that was far above other dates. Fran didn't talk to me all day. It seemed like she was mad that I had walked out on her. I tried to talk to her, but she ignored me, and I figured she was really mad. The video still circulated around school and a lot of people mocked me, but I no longer cared. It wasn't until the next day that I was finally able to talk to Fran. "I'm sorry," I told her immediately she turned around. "I was just trying to help. It doesn't matter anymore. Let them mock me all they want. By the way, I have a surprise for you," I informed her, and she raised a brow. You know I'm not one who's fond of surprises. Can't you just spill it? She asked, but I shook my head, smiling. Very soon. I replied, and she badgered me all day to tell her, but my lips were sealed. The days to Halloween counted down like someone was flipping through the pages of the dates, and before I knew it, I was dressed in Caden's dress. It was simply marvelous. It was a sweet ball gown, and I styled my hair the way Mina in the movie had styled hers. I wore flat shoes because I wasn't sure I could handle heels, and I had light makeup on. Reese's hairpin completed my whole look, and I saw someone else in me. Someone beautiful. When Caden saw me walk down the staircase, something in his eyes changed. It was like he was seeing someone else, and I loved that look in his eyes. However, he brushed it away quickly and walked out of the house, but he was too slow. I had seen the amazement in his eyes already. If I had been thrilled by the way Caden looked at me, heck, it was nothing compared to the way I felt when I stepped out of his car and all eyes were instantly turned to me. A girl dropped her phone and everyone's mouths dropped as Caden came around and I linked my arm with his. We walked and the people parted for us, gasping in shock. I tell you, it was heaven. Caden's POV. I had waited for over an hour just for Urine to dress up. Ethan and Reese had left because they couldn't wait and they had to pick up their dates. I was already feeling the anger boil in me, and I uncrossed my legs about to storm up the stairs and into the room to drag her out when I suddenly saw her coming down the stairs. I didn't even know where all the anger went. The dress came down in a V, exposing just a bit of her cleavages. It was quite a unique dress, and I couldn't explain how I felt seeing her in that dress, but the way I saw her changed. It didn't matter that she was fat, the dress fit her perfectly. Her face suddenly seemed regal, and I wondered where all the obvious fat on her face had gone because I couldn't see them anymore. A faint blush appeared on her cheeks, and I realized she was watching me. I immediately blinked, cleared my throat, and turned away. She followed me, holding up her dress, and the clink of her flat shoes echoed in the hall. I had transformed Urine into someone suitable for my date. All my doubts about her being hopeless suddenly flew away, and I was smiling in seconds. She got into the passenger seat, and I could see her taking occasional deep breaths as we got closer to the school. She was anxious, and that was good. When we pulled up at school, a lot of people were stepping down from their cars. A few were in the school walking in, and some were talking and watching everyone else arrive so they could talk about who dressed best. I wanted to open the door for Urine, but damn, she was too fast. She stepped out of the car before I could, and I could hear the gasps all around. Maybe it was a good idea for her to get out fast. It would get everyone else wondering who her date was. I deliberately wasted a little time in the car before getting out, and the gasps rang through the air. Murmurs broke out, and I offered my arm to Urine. She put her fingers around my arm, and we began to walk into the school. It seemed like everyone had paused, like they were watching a movie scene play out. The crowd parted, and then there became the flashes of light. The videos and photos had started. Urine's POV. My heart couldn't stop beating as the lights almost blinded me. The murmurs and whispers were so great that I could hear what each one was saying. Oh my! What the? Urine and Caden. Oh, kill me. So she actually had a date? Jeez! Unbelievable. I'm jealous. Why does she get to go with Caden when perfect girls like me are all around? Wow, she looks good in that dress. Caden is impressive. Is that really Urine? Someone please wake me. Tonight will be different. I feel it. I could hear all kinds of things, and even though I wanted to smile, I couldn't. I had never gotten that much attention in all my life, and it was too much for me. We had stolen the whole scene, and my heart didn't stop throbbing in my chest. My stomach seemed twisted, and I felt like I would be sick, but the best part of it was seeing Jessica and Braden stare at me like they were seeing someone else. I could smile for that. It turned out the people outside were not the real deal. The real deal was the school hall, which had students buzzing all around. Sharp gasps ran out. Jeez! Urine's Caden's date! Someone screamed, and there was an outbreak of noise as everyone had things to say. Caden led me to one of the specially decorated seats that were offered to those rich kids who paid for it, and I moistened my lips. I never imagined sitting there all my life. Whoa, a transformation! Reese bellowed when he saw me, and I hated how it made all the girls scream. "You look good." He complimented me, and I looked towards Ethan, who had a drink in his hand, sipping and looking like he wasn't even interested in all that was going on. Reese's and Ethan's date stared at me like I was trash. They clearly felt I wasn't worthy to join them. I began to wonder if I would enjoy the day with all the stares I was earning. "How do you feel?" Reese asked me as I sat in between him and Caden. I moistened my lips and my fingers found each other nervously. "Are you ignoring me now that you're a hot topic?" He whispered into my ear and I immediately turned to him. "No," I answered. I started and looked at all the students still staring and talking about me. They were all seeing me in a new light at the moment, and it felt good. "I feel good," I finally said, and a smile crept to my lips. Soon, the hall was filled with students and the buzz of their talk. A good percentage of the students were in funny costumes, while the rest were in couple costumes, and Halloween was starting. In the large crowd, I somehow managed to catch Francesca's eye, and I smiled in joy at catching a face I recognized, but instead she looked down. She was with Dylan Marcus, another well-known guy in school. He wasn't as popular as the triplets, but being asked out by him was quite an achievement. It was then I remembered she had been telling me to put in a good word for her with Reese. She probably thought I put in a good word for myself. She probably felt bad that I, who was lower than her, got the better date. I didn't know why I felt bad when I didn't even have a choice. Caden was my only hope to escape embarrassment, and there was no way I could tell Reese to ask Fran. They were still being nice, so I wasn't about to ruin it and have them prepare their worst for me. I tried catching Francesca's eye once more, but the hall suddenly scattered as everyone started to leave their seats. Where's everyone going?" I asked, looking at everyone, and Caden extended his hand. "Of course it's time for the dance," he replied coolly. "Dance? I would dance with Caden?" Yurine's Pove. I stared at him blankly for so long that he had to bend and reach for my hand instead. He pulled me up, and before I knew it, we were flowing amongst the throng of students, willing to get to the dance floor. Caden whirled me around once we got down, and I stumbled, which made him furrow his brows lightly. "You can't dance?" he asked, and I bit my lip. "Just a little. I'm not that much of a dancer," I admitted, and he sighed. I didn't want to disappoint him. Already he had done me a huge favor by taking me as his date. I only wanted to impress him. The music was slow and haunting, but it picked up pace, and before I knew it, I was panting and trying to keep up with Caden's steps, and also trying to keep my heart rate in check, because where his hands lay on my waist was burning and holding onto his neck was crucifying, as the whole thing felt wrong. I couldn't even look into his eyes properly. Immediately, we locked eyes. Mine would dart away, seeking comfort in another place. "You're a little slow. You should flow with the beat. Being fat is not an excuse," he remarked, and I knew he was getting annoyed. I didn't want to move too fast because I was scared I'd step on his feet, and shucks! That's exactly what I did the moment he spiked me round too fast. He winced in pain and raised his leg, then bit his lip sharply. "Just tell me you've never danced before. This is sick." He snapped, and I put an apology on my face. "I haven't danced much in my life. I'm afraid I'm really sloppy. Do you mind if we step out?" I asked, and his look almost killed me. I looked down immediately so he wouldn't get more annoyed by me staring at his face. Even with that, Caden didn't slow down. We raced across the dancing floor like our feet were on fire, and the look in his eyes told me I was going to be dead meat if I screwed it up. I knew my dance steps were crazy, but I did anything to keep up with Caden's pace, and before I knew it, people were laughing while some snickered. Caden kept a straight face all through the dance, smiling a little, and when the dance was over, he held my hand as we went back to our seat. Everyone probably saw it as affectionate, but of course, no one but me knew he was squeezing it too hard. He was punishing me for messing up his dance. A little speech was given. A group of girls offered a dance performance that got the audience on their feet cheering. A song was offered and snacks were shared round until it was time for the games. The people in the hall were divided into groups of 20 each, and Caden held me close to him, which was really uncomfortable for me, but I tried not to let it show. I tried to smile so everyone would think I was having fun. I wasn't having fun. I was trying so hard to be the perfect date for Caden, and it wasn't working because Caden's standards were too high. In a few minutes, I was sitting in a circle of one of the most popular kids in school. Francesca was also seated, and the thought was thrilling. I was given a chance to see what life as a cool kid was. Okay, we're going to start with the games, but of course, we have a new person in our midst, someone we're not used to seeing, so we'd like to hear her speak. A beautiful blondie announced, and I shifted uncomfortably as I knew she was referring to me. Caden looked at me with a smile, but I knew it was a warning not to screw it up. What was I to say? Words flew all around in my mind, and it was so hard to find something to say. My palms started to sweat, and my lips ran dry faster than I liked. Oh wait, before we hear our new friend out, we have to hear someone out first. I've seen Francesca a few times, but not too many. She's here today, so I'd like to ask her how she feels seeing her friend here. Was she aware of the splendid surprise Irene was cooking up for us? The blondie asked, and everyone in the circle seemed eager to hear Fran speak. Well, it's nice to be seated here actually, and I must say that I'm surprised to see Irene here, but I'm pleased nonetheless. Of course, I didn't know her date was Caden, as she kept it an ultimate secret. When she told everyone she had a date, I'm sad that I didn't believe her. But I do feel a sense of pride that my best friend managed to catch the attention of someone like Caden. Francesca spoke with a smile, but I couldn't help but have that deep-rooted feeling that she was lying. Applause rang out within our circle, and everyone turned to me, waiting for my perfect speech. So how do you feel? The blondie urged me when I delayed longer than I should have. It feels nice and new, I simply said, and they all seemed to wait for more, but I was done with speaking. Did they really expect me to give a long speech? It feels nice and new, yeah? Okay, how did you feel when Caden asked you out for Halloween night? Happy, I replied, and Reese was the first to burst out in laughter before others laughed a little. Urine, he called softly, staring at me. Let's move on, please. He urged, and I was thankful. I had felt a million things, but I couldn't put them into words, and instead of embarrassing myself and Caden, why not just make it curt? The first game we'll be playing is called Lipstick and Kisses. You're going to kiss your partner all over the face in a minute, and the person with the lowest amount of kisses gets a penalty, while the winner gets a reward. So let's choose who does the kisses, the blondie asked. The girls. Everyone answered immediately. Come closer, girls, get ready to kiss your guys, the blondie announced, and my heart fell. What? Was I going to kiss Caden all over the face? Irene's peau vive. My hands began to shake, and I felt nervous. How was it to kiss Caden all over his face? The person with the least kisses got a penalty. I didn't want that because Caden would hate me for it, but I also couldn't imagine kissing Caden all over the face. I hated it when Caden looked at me with disgust, and I was sure his face was going to be all squeezed up if I went close to him. I looked at the blondie with troubled eyes, and she smiled at me. I couldn't even tell if it was genuine or not. Hey, Maria, put a lot of lip gloss on. I don't want her running out of lip gloss, Reese told the blondie, who laughed. Don't you mind, Reese. He's a jokester. You'll get used to him, though. She told me with a bright smile as she applied lip gloss on my lips. I'll get used to him? Did she mean I was welcome to join their crew, all because I was Caden's date? Maria applied a lot of gloss to my lips, and Caden's eyes lingered on them when I went back to sit next to him. I needed an excuse to leave and not return. Just as I moved, about to give some random excuse, Caden placed his hand on mine, a warning, and he leaned in to whisper into my ear. You're dead if you screw this up. After saying that, he smiled and definitely made everyone think he had just told me something funny. Oh, God, why didn't I just deal with the embarrassment? Who was I to play around with Caden? Being his date was hard. I was in for a lot if I screwed up the night, but then I couldn't even have refused to be his date. He would get angry and punish me for rejecting him. I gave him a little smile and was about to moisten my lips, but I stopped myself in time so I wouldn't ruin the gloss on my lips. All right, position yourselves, ladies. Reese called out, and his date straddled him so she could get the most kisses on his handsome face, but even as he leaned backwards with his palms behind him, supporting him, his gaze was on me. Ethan didn't even seem to care about whatever was going on. His date, a little black-haired beauty, sat by his side, blushing with her hand over her heart. Our eyes met briefly, and I immediately took it off. How I wished Ethan had asked me out for the night. Now, all three brothers were busy staring at me. My throat were dry, and my fingers were trying desperately to find something to hold on to. "Start!" Maria called and started kissing her partner rapidly. Reese's eyes were on me even as he received kisses all over his face, so was Ethan's, and when I made the mistake of looking at Caden, I froze. He was barely holding his anger, but his eyes held me back. Seconds were ticking, and the time was going, but I was frozen. Can you close your eyes, please?" I asked desperately as his eyes seemed to burn into my soul. Luckily, he simply raised a questioning brow before closing his eyes, and I did what I never thought I'd do in 1,000 years. I moved the closest I'd ever got to Caden and planted the very first kiss. When I realized it wasn't hard kissing him with his eyes closed, I pushed him down, and I could see the shock that raced through his expression, although he didn't open his eyes. This was war. He was going to kill me anyway if I didn't win, so I had to fight my hardest. I kissed Caden everywhere on his face except his lips, which I dared not touch. I didn't even know I could be that fast. Maybe it was the desperation that drove me. Maybe it was the beating of my heart that sounded too loud in my ears at the moment. "Time up!" A girl who had been staring at a watch said, and I withdrew immediately. A smile formed on Caden's face, but I looked away because I didn't want to care about whatever was going on in his mind. Reese had an amused look on his face, and so did everyone else who had been watching. Then the girl who had been timing started counting the kisses on each face with a guy. We can count kisses that show halfway, but if it's not up to half and is hidden behind another kiss, it's not counted. She informed everyone, and they groaned. "His face is so small. What am I to do? Where else do I kiss?" Maria whined, and everyone laughed. I looked at Francesca, laughing along. She was so natural. She had planted kisses on every inch of her date's face, and when it was counted, they were numbered 36. I also exclaimed as it was the highest. However, when she got to Caden, she burst out laughing, and I looked at what I had done properly. Caden's whole face was covered in gloss and lip stains. There was barely space, everything was intertwined, and she couldn't even count because I had practically kissed his whole face. "We have our winner. There's no need to count anyone else's kisses anymore. You can see that beloved Caden is covered in them." She blurted out, smiling, and everyone laughed as they agreed. Caden was also all smiles as he took out a napkin and started to dab at his face. "Your reward will be revealed very soon," the girl informed me as everyone clapped and cheered me on. "Okay, let's move on. This is the game we've all been waiting for. Predators! Where are you?" she shouted, and they all cheered. "What's predator?" I asked, although no one but Caden heard. "You pick a paper. Predator or prey, then if you're a prey, you hide. When a predator finds a prey, they are to scratch them, and the prey with the most number of scratches gets hurt, of course, and has a penalty also." Caden exclaimed, and just then a paper was thrust into my hands. And when I looked at it, in it were the bold letters, "Prey. Reveal your statuses." Maria bellowed, and everyone showed what was written on their papers. As everyone looked at my paper, I couldn't help see the smirks of satisfaction on their faces as they eyed me. Prey. Urine's Pov. The stares continued, and soon enough, they morphed into little giggles. I looked at Caden's. Of course, he had gotten the role of predator. Reese and Ethan were also predators. It was then I began to suspect that they weren't randomly picked. They were checked. Because if the brothers were made preys, they would get absolutely angry, and that wouldn't be good, so it was safer to make people like me the prey. A few girls were also made prey, and I was surprised to see that Fran was also a prey. She was talking to a pretty girl who was a predator, and they were laughing. I suddenly felt alone in everything. Everyone was busy laughing, talking, and getting excited, but I had no one to talk to. "All right, preys, you have exactly 5 minutes before the predators strike. You are to stay around the field. That is the only hiding place you've got. Any other place and you're out," Maria announced, and everyone screamed in affirmation. The prey all scattered amongst themselves, chattering excitedly, and I struggled to my feet. It was then I noticed that the dress was a little tight. When I had been wearing it earlier, I had been so excited by its beauty, I didn't realize it was a little constricting on my chest. When I walked out to the field, a couple of girls suddenly crowded me. I stepped back in shock as I didn't expect anything like that to happen. "How in the world did it happen?" one of them asked, looking like she wished to tear me apart with her bare hands. "Did you go to him? Beg him? What the hell did you do?" another asked, poking her finger on my head. "We all know he was supposed to ask Stacy out, but you butted in. Because of you, Stacy had to go with some random guy and have fun with him because all the good guys have been taken. If you know what's best for you, you'll step out of that dress and leave the party now." The first one who had spoken told me, what were they saying? How could I leave the party? They were basically telling me to die in Caden's hands. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, to let them know I was as good as any of them, and that I didn't beg Caden, nor did I play dirty. He came to me himself. "Can't you speak?" another one said, slapping me in the forehead and forcing me to back a few feet. "Just look at her. A disgusting slug is trying to snag Caden. Listen to me, ball of fat. Know your place. If you know what's good for you, you would stay where you're put." Another told me with hatred in their eyes. I still didn't say anything. I simply let them talk and rail all they wanted, as shame heated my body. They said every nasty words to make me even more aware of how bad I probably looked in contrast to them. And even though I didn't want to let it get to me, it later got to me. I fell, they'd have railed, and ranted all night if they hadn't seen the predators coming. "Oh my God, it's been 5 minutes? Gosh, leave this idiot alone. Let's find a place to hide before we all get scratched." I turned around as the girls ran and saw the predators scattered in different directions and already searching for their first victims. My legs immersed found their strength and started to run as fast as they could. It didn't help that my dress was feeling a little too tight already, and that I was already losing all my spirit for the night. After panting, I managed to hide in between the seats of the auditorium where we watched boys play football and lacrosse. It felt like I was stuck because the space was really tight and I could hardly move. I began to feel like I would get a million scratches in that spot. "Irini?" I suddenly heard Francesca call, and I turned my head. She was right in between the next row, doing a good job of hiding in her little black dress. "Fran, I didn't know you were here," I blurted out happily. I suddenly felt better seeing her. "They're going to find you easily with that flashy red dress you have on," she remarked, and I tried to look at it, but it wasn't possible. It was getting really hard to breathe. "Is it that pretty?" I asked with a smile, and I saw her roll her eyes before smiling. "It's beautiful. It's well expected of Caden. Was this the surprise you had for me?" "Yeah, surprise, surprise," I answered, trying to adjust and find a better position, but it only made things worse. How was I going to get out? Fran turned on her side, resting her head on her palm with her elbow to the ground as she looked up at me. "How did you do it?" "Do what?" I asked, even though I knew what she was talking about. "Snag Caden." "I didn't snag Caden, okay?" "Then how did he ask you out? I don't think we should be talking. They might hear us. They're all over the field. And we're up here. Sooner or later, someone is going to come up here. Well, we're already talking, aren't we?" "Fine. He just came up to me." "Where? And how did he make that dress? He doesn't even know the size you wear, and I know you don't have that much money to buy a dress, especially one as pretty as this," she questioned, staring at me hard. "He probably guessed. He's probably seen me a lot of times. Remember, he was hiding behind me during dodgeball. He probably could guess from that." "Do you think Caden likes you? He gave you that can of plum juice the other day, and there was nothing wrong with it," she implied, but I shook my head lightly. It was his plan, so I could trust him enough to drink his drugged bottle of water. He can't like someone like me. What if he actually likes you and asks you out? "That can never happen," I assured her, but she was persistent. "What if?" She pressured, looking like she wanted me to say no. "Well, no. It'll just make me a nation of enemies. I already got countries of them." I joked and chuckled. "Well, since Caden is your date, you think you could pull the Reese thing off?" She asked again, and I almost gave a frustrated sigh. Why was she trying to get involved with Reese? At that rate, she was going to find out I was their slave, and I didn't want that. "I don't know. He has a date." "Come on, Urine. I'm starting to think you want it all for yourself. What's in it to just help me say a word? What would it cost you to just help me get around them?" she asked, and I could see traces of anger and desperation in her voice. Sometimes Fran got so blinded by what she wanted that she didn't even notice she was hurting the other person. I was about to reply when I heard a silent footstep. Someone had been creeping on us all along. "I hear something." I told her quietly, and she froze. Through a space in the chair before me, I saw a head coming up, and when it did, I realized with a jolt that it was Reese, Urine's POV. Fran went very still where she was, and I knew she was very hard to miss. Well, well, well. Here lies Caden's date, stuck, I guess, in between tight chairs. He mocked, sneering down at me. My heart raced as I wondered how deep he was going to strike. Was I going to have to spend the rest of the day injured? "Anyone up there, Reese?" a guy asked from below, and Reese turned to him casually with his hands dug deep in his pockets. "Nah, came here to rest. I'm tired," he replied, and I heard the guy chuckle, then his receding footsteps harsh on the grass as he went to find prey. Reese turned and bent towards me, and I buckled, trying to find a way to escape. If I could at least find a way to sit up or get on my feet, I could persuade him not to do it, that it would be a bad idea. "You're making a lot of noise. Stay still," he cautioned, and through the corner of my eye I could see Francesca with her hand clamped hard on her mouth, trying not to breathe. Reese wrapped his strong arms around my waist, which made my eyes go double their size, and pulled in one strong motion, and I was free. He dropped me mercilessly to the ground after that, and I heard a little rip in the seams of my dress from behind. Besides the sound of the rip, my hip throbbed with pain. "Get up, quickly," he told me, and I struggled to my feet, rubbing my hip as best as I could through the layers of fabric. "Listen, I know this is the rules of the game, and you think you and your layers of extra fat can make it across the field? Hide in that tree and do not come out," he said, pointing to the large tree at the side of the field. "Wait, you're not scratching me?" I asked with wide eyes and a curious tone. "What would I gain from that?" he asked, looking down at me like I was a piece of trash he couldn't be bothered to touch. "It isn't even fun touching you, and besides, you're Caden's date tonight. You shouldn't have a single scratch on your body, not even the littlest," he growled, then leaned in towards me, making a chill race down my spine. "Now, you clumsy oaf, make it to that tree without a scratch, else by the morning you'll have my marks designed all over your body," he whispered threateningly, and my blood went cold. "I will. I'll make it," I immediately said to him, because Fran was still there, and if he decided to continue his threats out loud, Fran would know that something was up. I raced down the stairs carefully, watching the predators run around the hidden places of the field, scratching prey who screamed and begged. I really wondered why they did such. A game, they called it, but it wasn't. It was an excuse to inflict wickedness on victims. I bent as low as I could, skulking along in the shadows and stopping whenever someone came too near. Why couldn't Caden have gotten a black dress? Why did he choose Dracula and Mina's of all outfits? I continued my way steadily across the shadowed path, and when I had to turn so I could continue in the shadow of the large auditorium, I met with a girl who had her claws out. Ooh, I'm the one with the opportunity. Oh, come on, can I tear into your bags of flesh?" she teased as she stared at her long claws longingly, and I took slow steps back with my legs wobbling. "Why not? It's an opportunity," she cooed to herself in delight. "Your face. I'll just—" she was saying as she raised her claws up high, ready to strike, but before she could, someone held her wrist and pulled her backward, making her stumble and fall. It was Ethan. "Find yourself another prey," he growled, and she immediately jumped to her feet and ran. Ethan took my hand, and we ran amidst the screams, pleas, and hideous laughter from the predators across the field. It was no game. "Here," Ethan said, putting two of his hands down, implying I should step on it so I could climb onto the lowest branch. No, Come on, you want scratches instead? He asked, and I shook my head before taking off my shoes and climbing onto his hands. The lowest branch was easy to climb onto, but the others were not so easy. But eventually, I made it to a branch shrouded with leaves and jumped when Ethan came to sit next to me. I could see the field below filled with people running and chasing. From that height, it looked like they were having fun, with their hair and dresses flowing behind them. It turned out the prey were only girls, while the predators were mixed. I expected the date of a popular boy in school to be a bit more vibrant, he remarked, staring down at the field. I looked at him and took in a deep breath. If I were someone else, maybe it'd be better. That means, he questioned. Take a look at me. I have so many nicknames due to my size. Maybe if I was slimmer, I'd have skyrocketed to popularity amongst the females, but like this, it only attracted more haters that didn't even care for my existence days ago. I explained slowly. Why didn't you tell Caden? Tell him what? I asked, playing with my fingers, that you didn't want to be his date. I was happy. I thought it would be great to get back at those horrible people, but even though I didn't want to go with him, who am I to say no? That's just spelling more trouble than I can handle for myself. I told him, trying to smile, and he stared at me. Your self-esteem is too low. It doesn't bother you? He asked gently, and I wanted to cower from the force of his stare. Pride, ego, those things are not for me. They've never been for me. I told him, and he looked away. I expected you to be a little more different. He murmured and relaxed into the tree, closing his eyes. A little different? I heard myself ask, and he opened his eyes once more, staring at me. Then he raised a brow. You don't throw yourself at us. Don't want our attention? I thought you'd be a little interesting. He replied, and in those words was hope to me. It felt like they had a hidden meaning. Maybe if I could be a little interesting, I could catch his attention, or catch more than just his attention. Marine's POV. Don't bother about it. I'm just speaking according to my preference. You don't have to change anything to be a little interesting. For now, just focus on not getting caught and not interrupting my sleep. He replied, folding his arms and closing his eyes once more. And what's your preference? I managed to ask and bit my lip, waiting for his response. I thought I didn't want my sleep interrupted. He murmured and didn't say another word after that. We sat there in the trees for a long time, not saying anything, and I began to wonder if he was truly asleep, as he had said. About 30 minutes later, they called a timeout and announced the end of the game. Ethan opened his eyes and jumped down the branches quickly, landing on the ground softly and silently. That was just simply amazing. I'll be on my way, he said to me without turning back, and walked away with his hands in his pockets. Wait, what? He helped me up the tree but wasn't helping me get down? I looked down at the ground and suddenly got a chilling feeling. It was too far, and I was too heavy to get down as lightly as he did. What if I fell? I swallowed and reached out with a shaky leg to the branch below. When my feet touched it, I withdrew. It felt like the branch was going to break even, though I could clearly see its largeness and thickness. I swallowed again and took a deep breath, stepping on it with one foot before easing myself slowly off the branch I sat on and placing my feet securely on it. I bent down and managed to sit on it. Okay, there's an easy way to do it. No fuss. It's fine. I told myself, trying to see my next target instead of the ground. Even seeing it from my peripheral view was unnerving. If I fell, it was a straight gateway into my coffin. I managed to slip down onto the next branch and gave myself some space to breathe and some minutes for my heart rate to slow a bit. The next branch was a little farther, and I needed a jump. My hands and feet were already wet with sweat. What if I happened to slip? Couldn't Ethan have been kind enough to help me down the tree? Why did he have to leave me all alone? Now that I saw it, going up was far easier than getting down, for someone like me, I guess. I closed my eyes and tried to jump, but they flew back open immediately. Keep those eyes open, Urine, I cautioned myself. You won't believe me if I tell you I got down from the tree 30 minutes later, and it being just 30 minutes was all because I fell off the tree when I got to the second to the last branch. I tugged on my shoes and walked back slowly to the hall. Oh, there she comes! Took a million years to find her way back! A guy with blonde hair taunted, and everyone burst into laughter. Everyone's eyes followed me as I went to sit, and it felt like I was being fried by those eyes. I took my seat next to Caden and tried to sit as gracefully as I could manage, but I ended up plopping down with a little gasp, and there was a little silence in which everyone watched me before they continued. "Where did you hide?" Maria asked, scratching her neck. "In the tree," I answered, and their eyes widened. Maria slapped her hair to her forehead, and others bit their lips or did something to show their dissatisfaction. "But a tree? How can you climb? I mean you," a guy said and roamed his eyes all over me to indicate that he was wondering how someone like me could climb with that body of mine. "I managed it," I replied, picking a loose seam on my dress. "That's probably why she took ages to show up. She was busy coming down and trying not to fall." The girl who had wanted to scratch me earlier said and rolled her eyes. "Well, you've emerged as a winner of the 2 games we've had today, and that was totally unpredicted." Maria spoke, running her hands through her hair. "So the reward you get for winning this prey game is you get whatever you want from your date. Whatever, you name it, and you're lucky you have such a nice date." She continued, and I glanced at Caden quickly. I'm fine. I don't want much." "Come on, don't be boring. You could ask for a contract," Reese said, with a smirk pulling up a side of his mouth. He wasn't trying to tell me I could ask Caden to break the contract. He was trying to threaten me again with the contract because there was no way I could let everyone know I had a slave contract with them. A dating contract. He completed with a smile, and all the girls' eyes went wide with jealousy. "Oh, get up and say it dramatically," Maria said, and I really didn't see the need in that, because it was just to ask for something I wanted. Either way, I got on my feet and looked at Caden. "For winning, a bag would be nice," I said, hoping it was dramatic enough. Everyone clapped and Caden smiled. "Sure, a bag," Caden replied, and I made to go back to sit. "You don't need to sit. Your reward for winning the kissing game is to sing a song, so just climb up that little staircase and let's hear what you sound like," Maria urged, and my heart lurched in my throat. "Sing?" My eyes flew to Ethan, who was watching me intensely, and I swallowed. A different me would sing happily. My voice was okay. Maybe if they could see it was nice, maybe it could turn a few hearts towards me. So with that crazy thought in mind, I went towards the little staircase, and I heard the most horrible sound of my life. Air suddenly blew across my back, and I felt free. Of course, the freedom came with a rip. The dress had finally given in. Caden's Yurine's dress ripped open and my eyes went wide. I hadn't expected that to happen at all. Everyone at first didn't seem to understand what had happened. They stared at her white flesh in horror. Ethan shot me an accusatory look, and I immediately told him with my eyes that I was innocent, although I doubt he believed me. Urine reached out with her hand to feel her back, and that was when a choked giggle broke out. Several choked giggles broke out, and as they tried to muffle their laughter, everyone ended up laughing. Urine stood rooted to that spot, and I could feel her trembling from where I sat. She finally turned slowly, staring at everyone with shame filling her wide eyes. She suddenly looked like a lost puppy staring at family dogs. She took a step back, and her eyes glimmered with water. I didn't know when I got to my feet and walked across the circle towards her. Her eyes held fear as she saw me walking over to her, and she took a step back. But I guess I surprised her because her eyes widened when I took off my suit and draped it around her shoulders. I could feel the tremble in her body and the hot shame as she turned to me. Her large tears fell, and a drop of it hit my hand as I drew it closer around her. I stopped and looked at her. "You should smile. It's funny. Crying only makes them laugh more, and I'm telling you this because in a second, I'm going to join in the laughing." I told her, and she bit her lip and wiped her tears. She looked troubled, but I didn't care. I needed her to smile because I couldn't watch my date embarrass herself. She moistened her lips and turned to the people. "When you're done singing, let's get you something better to wear. This dress wasn't that good anyway," I said, and could see the jealous looks on the ladies' faces as Urine nodded. I went back to sit, and Urine gave a nervous chuckle. "This happens all the time to me. It's actually crazy that it happened here. I'm sorry I ruined such a dress. I guess my body doesn't like it much," she said a little timidly, and as everyone laughed, I joined in the laughter. "Quite a scene. I'll sing something now," she added and stepped back. I could still see the red blush in her face, and I knew she was trying hard not to cry. I just hoped she didn't burst into tears because that would be embarrassing. Everyone would think I chose the wrong date for the first time, and my dates were never wrong, so Irene had to be right, no matter what. A mic was handed to her, and she gripped it a little too tight and closed her eyes. The day was going really bad, and I was starting to get cranky. I didn't even think punishing her could ease the anger I felt. She started singing Ed Sheeran's Perfect in a lousy and wobbly tone, and I could see people shaking their heads. Angry bubbled in me, and Reese winking at me only made it worse. Then all of a sudden, her voice got steady when she got to the chorus, and it was a beautiful soprano that made me turn to stare at her. Everyone else was stunned as confidence seeped into the lyrics of the song. It seemed so weird, as my anger began to abate and turn into something else. Almost everyone in the hall stopped what they were doing to stare at Irene, and even though I was still in my right senses, I couldn't help but see a different person in her. As she sang, she wasn't the shy, pathetic Irene who always got on my nerves. She seemed like she could be someone I'd laugh with. I blinked rapidly and shook my head. How could I think that way of fat Irene? Never. How could I ever imagine she could be someone I'd laugh with? That was pathetic. The song suddenly seemed short and ended quickly. Everyone was forced to clap even though they didn't want to, and Irene bit her lip as her gaze fell to the floor. She was obviously not used to the attention nor the applause. "Thank you," she said and dropped the mic into Maria's hands. "That was awesome." Maria complimented, and the way Irene blushed reminded me that she was nothing but a fool. We were about to continue with the next game, but I stood up and took Irene's hand. "I need to get her a new dress. She can't continue like this," I announced, and Reese raised a brow. If he thought I was pleased because Irene had sung beautifully, he was wrong. It didn't change the way I saw her. Irene's hand shook in mine, and I could see she was uncomfortable with her hand in mine, and it only made me mad. We walked out of the hall, and she distanced herself the moment I held her hand. I didn't care and stuffed my hands into my pockets. She seemed to know she had offended me, and it was better that way. We got into the car, and I pushed the key into the ignition before pulling out of the school's driveway. "Thank you," Irene muttered, and I scoffed. "Thank you? You should be apologizing." I snapped as we raced amongst the fleet of cars speeding on the road. She looked confused, but was quick to think about her actions of the night. "I'm sorry." She apologized, scratching her hair, and I ignored her. We drove to a nearby boutique and stepped out of the car. As I stepped out of the car, the ladies standing around smiled at me and hit themselves, but when Irene stepped out, they looked at me in shock. How I hated their expressions. We walked into the boutique and were directed to the section for dresses. As Irene checked the dresses for her size, I took out my phone, and just as I was about to look at it, I caught someone behind the rows of clothes. "Ethan?" Irene's pove. Caden looked at me with such intensity that it freaked me out. It seemed like he was looking through me. I blinked and lowered my lashes, the very first sign of a blush appearing on my cheeks. Caden lowered his eyes and went back to staring at his dark costume, which made everything seem better. The breeze suddenly began to flow better, and the atmosphere was a cool one. "I found a love. For me," I started, the lyrics soft, and this time, my voice wasn't wobbling and trembling. It was stable and sounded sweet even to my ears. As I continued to sing softly, I saw Caden's long lashes close gently. He flipped them open the moment he realized they had been closed, and it made me smile. Maybe drunk Caden was better than sane Caden. At that point, I snapped to reality. Why would I be fantasizing or even thinking about Caden? Heck, I wasn't supposed to be thinking that way towards the brothers. It was how love grew, and I wasn't ready for serious heartbreak. But, wait, no, it can't be attraction. How could I be attracted to the triplets? That was just spelling doom for me. My thoughts didn't for once interrupt my song. It was like my mouth was doing what it knew how to do best, and my brain trusted it enough to leave it and start thinking. The lyrics flowed past, and I didn't know when I was almost at the end. Heck, I didn't even know what was going on around me until Caden's head fell to my shoulder. The song stopped abruptly, and I went stiff and tense. It suddenly became hard to swallow my saliva. My heart seemed to be doing its own thing, beating and thundering without wondering how uncomfortable it was for me. I moistened my lips and tried to continue singing, but I had lost track of where I had stopped, so I began to sing again, trying to get used to the scent of Caden's sweet hair lotion crowding my neck. When I managed to look at him, I saw that his hair was really smooth and shiny. It was somewhat adorable, and I didn't know when I bent to sniff it. The smell hit me hard, and I began to feel like a bee going after nectar. It was so thrilling to be so close to Caden when he was silent and wasn't saying a word. We sat there for maybe an hour more. I lost in my train of thoughts, and he lost in the tide of his dreams. I heard footsteps coming closer, and I froze, not wanting to look back for fear of waking Caden. Wait, why was I scared to be seen in such a posture with Caden? After all, I didn't force his head on my shoulder. He had laid on it willingly. "Isn't this beautiful?" I heard Reese's mocking voice come from behind, and seconds later, he and Fran came to stand in front of me. "Picture perfect," he remarked, and raised his phone to take a photo. I flinched, but didn't shift from Caden. I wasn't sure Caden would like to see that photo, so naturally I was concerned. "Smile," Reese ordered, and after taking a quick glance at Fran, I smiled. Reese stared at the photo he had taken for a while before stuffing his phone into his pockets. "We're going home," he said, and my heart raced. I just hoped Fran didn't think I was going with them, and I hoped Reese also didn't intend for Fran to know. "Urine, let's go home together," Fran said to me with a sweet smile, and I knew it was because she wanted to tell me of all the things she and Reese had spoken about, but I couldn't. Urine has to take Caden home. After all, she's his date for the night, and she made him sleep. Reese told her casually, and I bit my lip. It was a weird lie. Ethan came out next with his hands in his pockets, and he threw a ball of paper at Caden, who stirred but didn't wake. "Reese, how about our take Francesca home? It's quite late," Ethan said, and Fran's face lit up in barely suppressed joy. "It's fine, though. I can take care of myself." Fran replied, blushing, and Reese shot me a dangerous look. Really, Ethan was trying to help me once more. I gave him a pleading look, and he mouthed angry swear words at me. Even as he did, I didn't feel bad, and I feared I had began to warm up to the triplets, maybe even like them despite how horrible they were. Reese took Fran home, and all the way in Ethan's car, I thought about Caden's words. He had said I had beautiful eyes, and when he said that, he had been looking into my eyes, looking like he meant them, and even the thought of it heated up my cheeks. If he had really meant it, then I had something to be proud of. With a wide smile on my face, I looked up and accidentally caught Ethan's eyes on me through the front mirror. I immediately cleared my throat and erased the stupid smile on my face. "I guess you had a nice night after all," he commented, his eyes going back to the road. "It wasn't all that bad," I replied quietly. When we got home, we waited for Reese to be back because Ethan had said we had stuff to discuss. Caden lay on the sofa widespread, and when Reese opened the door, grumbling, he was jolted awake by the sound. "God, I'm home," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "The next time you set me up with that idiot, I'm going to make you pay, Urine. You cannot introduce anyone to me." Reese bellowed, pointing a finger at me, and I nodded immediately, sucking in breath sharply. "All right, I'll be quick. There'll be a school trip, and we're going to have to rediscuss the terms of our contract," Ethan said briskly as Reese fell to the sofa exhausted. "Rediscuss? School trip? How was I going to be their slave on a school trip? Wasn't that the same as letting everyone know?" Urine's pove. I tried to hide my surprise and put my legs together, holding my hands as a sign of being docile. I was trying to let them know that I had no choice but to accept whatever decision they made, so I was pleading with them to go easy on me. "Exactly. Our contract must go on," Reese said, sitting up, while Caden ruffled his hair, still looking like he hadn't stepped away from his dreams yet. "Everything would go as normal. We would call on Urine whenever we want, and she will do whatever we want." Ethan started, and Reese's nasty smile made my heart lurch. "But," Ethan said, stressing on that word. "But what?" Reese asked, rolling his eyes. "Caden, are you here?" Ethan asked Caden, who had been staring at him expressionlessly. Do I look like I'm in La La Land? Caden retorted, and Ethan stared at him without a shift in his expression before he continued. But the contract stays between us four, Ethan concluded, and my heart burst in flames of relief. We are not to do anything that would dangerously point out our contract with her, he added, and Caden and Reese made eye contact before rolling their eyes. Why couldn't they just be like Ethan? He was less trouble. All right, that's cool, Reese finally said, leaning back on the sofa. Reese says it's cool, so it is, Caden replied, and Ethan gave a little smile. Do you guys have something else to say? He asked, leaning back on the sofa to give. Well, Irene overstepped her boundaries tonight. She played a cheap trick on me to set me up with her best friend, Reese reported, staring at me with needles in his gaze. I was about to lie, but he raised a brow. Speak. I didn't. I clearly heard you guys talking in the auditorium on the field. She wanted you to introduce me to her, and you had the damn guts to. Who do you think you are? He asked, and I bowed my head low. I'm deeply sorry, I really am. I apologized because there was nothing much to say. Well, you should apologize also for making a mess of my day. Caden chipped in, and both Reese and Ethan raised a surprised brow. What? Her damn dress split open, revealing layers and layers of fat, he blurted out, and as Reese burst into laughter, 10,000 needles pricked my heart. It must have really been ugly. That was really embarrassing. You picked the wrong girl, Reese remarked. How is that her fault? You picked the wrong dress. You didn't take her measurements, but you went ahead to make such a tight-fitting dress in a little amount of time. The day was ruined with the dress. After all, she kissed excellently, she hid brilliantly, and she sang beautifully. She tried her best to be perfect for you. There's nothing to whine about, Caden. I think Reese is the only one who deserves to be mad. Ethan shut him up coolly, and I felt grateful, although the hot gaze Caden sent my way was scary. Somehow, Reese and Caden kept their anger at me for days. They didn't talk to me either. At school, just as I had predicted, I turned out with 1,000 more haters. They hated me for being something close to beautiful, and they didn't hesitate in letting it show. Fran was all giggly and excited as she told me how romantic Reese could actually be. It sounded like he had had fun with Fran, so if he had, then why did he get mad? You wouldn't believe me if I told you Fran wanted me to set them up once more, to actually matchmake them. Who did she think I was? Their friend? The school announced the trip, which was going to take place in a month's time, and it was a damn trip to Paris, the city of love. It wasn't compulsory for all students, as we were going to spend Christmas and New Year there, instead of in the company of our family. So some were given the opportunity of not going. But that didn't matter, because everyone was willing to forsake a Christmas with family for a Christmas with pretty boys and girls and hot things to melt the cold Christmas snow. It was actually going to be the first Christmas and New Year I'd spend without my mother, and I felt a little sad that I was leaving her to have Christmas and New Year all by herself. The triplets arranged all my documents for me. I simply followed their lead, trying not to get in their way. They paid a large sum of money for the four of us, and I wondered if Fran wasn't going to be suspicious about where I got such an amount of money to waste on a school trip. The days flew by and turned into weeks of more tiring days at school and more fear of Caden and Reese ignoring me. Were they saving up their punishment for me or what? Sometimes I saw them snickering when I walked past, and I couldn't help but think they were planning something for me. The months passed, and December came, bringing with it white snow that powdered the trees and rooftops beautifully. We were to leave on the 18th so we could get there in time, as the whole trip thing that was promised to be fun was to start on the 19th. I visited my mother for some hours before going to pack up all my bags, and it was then I realized I hadn't signed up with the bus that would drive us to the airport. It didn't look like trouble, right? No, it definitely was. If I showed up at the airport in the triplets' dazzling sports car instead of the school bus, everyone was bound to know that something was up, and they were bound to start suspecting stuff. How was I going to do it? There was no way I could show up with the triplets. What if Caden and Reese demanded I go with them with some silly excuse just to see the expression on people's faces when I came down their car? Urine's Pove. I paced around for a while, thinking of how much it would cost me to get a cab to take me there when I realized it would be easier to talk to Ethan. My only prayer was that Caden or Reese wouldn't be there. I left the room and walked towards Ethan's door, hesitating before I knocked. When I did, the door suddenly swung open and I went back a few feet as Ethan came out looking like he had just woken up. His hair was rough and his eyes were half closed. That was so unlike him. He came forward and I stepped out of the way to let him pass freely, and I followed as he went. He went down to the kitchen and I waited, rocking on my feet for him to drink water. He took an unnecessarily long time just to twist the bottle cap open, and eventually I took the bottle from him gently and poured it into a glass. "Here," I said, pushing the glass towards him. He drank and finally opened his eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, and I raised a brow. So he had known that I had been there all along? "Concerning the contract, I just thought people are bound to notice if I show up at the airport along with you guys in the car," I explained, and he raised a brow. "Oh, we forgot to sign you up with the bus. I'll fix it," he simply said and walked away. Just like that? Seriously? I turned around to watch him and Caden came in. My eyes fell to my feet and I took an involuntary step backwards. He fiddled with the dirty dishes and took out a pack of cornflakes ready to eat, and I knew he was trying to tell me to wash the dishes. To avoid trouble, I did, and I could feel his eyes boring holes on my back as I did the dishes. When he was done, he dropped his dish into the sink and left the kitchen. I exhaled and stared at the door. Why weren't they talking to me? What were they planning? The next day, I checked my things once more to be sure everything I needed was in there, and smiled to myself after ensuring I wasn't leaving anything important behind. In school, Fran was hyper. The bus was being loaded with people and their things, and all through the loading, Fran didn't stop chattering. "I'm going to fall in love with some French guy who would be head over heels in love with me," she squealed, tucking my hair behind my ear, and I smiled. "And what happened to the triplets?" I asked with my voice in a whisper, and she pulled a look that feigned indecision. "Well, since the triplets are playing hard to get, I'll just get swayed by the sweet words of a Frenchman," she said with the loftiness that made it seem like the triplets were definitely going to chase after her later. "Of course, that's the smartest thing to do, my lady," I replied, playing along, and she giggled. We were all settled into the long buses when it was almost noon, and the buses shook with excitement and different chatter. Here, hurry!" Fran called to me when she finally saw a seat. Almost every seat had been taken already, so I tried my best to be quick enough to get to her, and when I did, I sank into the comfortable seat. "Long time, Urine," I suddenly heard someone say, and I turned to see Jessica on the other column to our right. I stared at her hard before going back to look at the window next to me. "Did anyone wonder how Urine managed to pay for this, or am I the only one?" she asked, and I knew she was up for a fight. I rolled my eyes and shook my head. "That's quite true. Urine, how did you manage to do it?" Fran asked, and I wondered why she did. After all, she hadn't asked since the whole trip thing started. "I used up my savings," I replied curtly. "Savings?" she asked, and I nodded. "You were saving for the trip?" Jessica asked. "I had savings before the trip was announced." I shot back at her with annoyance. Why was she so desperate to make trouble for me? "I'm sorry, I didn't know you had enough money to save some for an expensive trip," she retorted, but I ignored her, pushing my earpieces into my ears. We got to the airport and waited for a long time for our flight. The triplets arrived in matching black t-shirts, white Nike shorts, and white sneakers. Ethan had black sunglasses on and looked dashing. Caden had casual fashion glasses that had silver edges, while Reese had a cap turned towards the back. In such casual gear, they looked dashing, and the hearts of all the girls went soft, including mine. Not until I hardened it. We got on the plane, and the safety guidelines were explained to us by the cabin attendants. Shortly after that, the pilot announced our takeoff, and the plane began to move. It was my first time, and I tried hard to keep my excitement at bay. The food was nice, but otherwise it was all very boring, The triplets were in the VIP section, and Fran didn't stop with her daydreams. By the time we got to France, it was in the evening, and I couldn't stop smiling. "I'm in the city of love," I squealed to Fran, who joined my excitement with hers. "We're in Paris, baby," she shouted, and I giggled. "We're not in Paris yet," I corrected with a smile, and her hand flew to her mouth. "Oops, my bad." It was getting pretty late, so we looked for a hotel, and the teachers handled all the requirements before coming to meet us. They started sorting out names of people who were to stay together. It was normally 4 in a room, but I wasn't surprised when the triplets got a room together and alone. After all, Ethan had gotten me a seat in the bus when all seats had been taken. However, I was very shocked when I realized who my partner to share a room with was. It was none other than Jessica. The trip just went bad. Yurine's pov. Jessica shot a disgusted look my way, making me feel annoyed. Was she the only one that didn't like being paired with me? Why was she overreacting? It wasn't like I wanted to spend the night with her either. "Oh no, Uranie." Fran pouted as she opened her arms wide. I hugged her and she patted me. "Don't you worry, we can still see each other when the day is bright again," she added, patting my cheek like I was a kid. "Sure," I replied, and dragged my luggage along with me, following Jessica and the 2 seniors that had been chosen to share the room with us. We took the elevators, and I stood as far away from them as I could manage. I was so scared, thinking Urine would show up with the triplets today. Ha! What a fool I was. The first girl said, Come on, Margaret. Caden was just using her for fun. It meant nothing." The second said, and Jessica laughed, "She's actually here, you know." She told them, smiling, and the 2 of them turned to look at me, pretending they hadn't known that I'd been following all along. "Oh my, Asha, that was mean of you," Margaret said to the second girl, who feigned an apologetic look. "I'm sorry," she apologized, but I simply ignored her. What was I to say when I knew they were simply mocking me? They turned away and giggled, clearly happy at having won a shot at me. We got to the hotel room, and I picked the bed in the corner so I didn't have to face them or see whatever they were doing. I took out my pajamas from my luggage, which I kept well underneath my bed should the girls intend to do something to it while I was asleep, so I'd know if they were trying to take it. After taking a shower, food was brought to us. We were having steak frites for dinner, and I was impressed by what I saw. I immediately took mine and sat on my bed, attacking the meat with the fork and knife given to me. Is this what they serve the whole school? What if some people don't like fries? Jessica asked, balancing the dish on her lap as she sat on the bed. Then they take it out, Margaret replied, without taking her eyes off the movie playing on the TV. The rule is, if you do not like the meal provided by the school, you order yours with your money. They're not making the trip to cater to everyone's different tastes. All they're doing is provide something the majority likes and something acceptable and presentable. Asha explained, eating her steak with her fingers and licking them noisily. Oh, so if we're present beans and ketchup for days, people like Irene have to eat that without complaining, Jessica said, and the 3 of them cracked up. I didn't even bother about them. I just paid attention to the lovely steak on my plate, which seemed to be the most delicious thing I had ever eaten in all my life. After dinner, I went to bed and turned off the lamp close to me to dim the lights around me. It gave a rather cozy atmosphere, and I didn't even know when sleep took me away. The next morning, we all dressed up, and after breakfast of toast, bacon, and coffee, we all made our way down the stairs to continue on our journey. We took the bus to drive to the airport where we'd take the plane for Paris, our actual destination. "Sweetie," Fran said, finally coming to me. She had been chatting with her roommates ever since we left the hotel, and it was just now she had the time to talk to me. "Hey," I replied, and she sat next to me, holding my hand. "Did you talk to any of the triplets today?" she asked sweetly, and I knew where she was heading to. "No." "Why would I? Why won't you?" "It's not like I know them or something," I replied her, and she squinted her eyes at me. "Don't you want to know them?" she asked. "I don't." I heard myself snap. "If you're in a cranky mood, tell me. Don't vent it on me," she replied with a pout, but I wasn't in the mood to smile. I didn't even want to talk. When our plane landed at Paris, everyone went crazy. taking photos, running and buying different things they could eat and drink. Even the air smelled different, and I couldn't deny the fact that the French people were beautiful creatures. Every lady that passed by had my head turning around to study her. The triplets had also changed into another set of matching designer outfits, and I couldn't help but envy them as they talked to themselves. When Caden was about to turn, I took away my eyes, turning away swiftly so he wouldn't even remember someone like me who he liked to trouble existed. Just then, I received a text on my phone. It was from Caden. My heart bumped in my throat. He was finally talking to me, and it meant he had something nasty in mind. I didn't want to open the message. I didn't want to see its content. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen it, but I knew how angry Caden could get when he was ignored, so I clicked on the message. Hello, Irene. Enjoying Paris? I tried so hard not to whip my head to the back to see him because that was all I wanted to do. Yes! I sent back, and he sent another message immediately. I slipped my credit card into your bag earlier, buy me an ice cream and present it to me, and wait for me to take my first bite. My heart jolted and I dipped my hand into my bag, searched around and found it. His credit card. It looked like a normal order from a master to a maid to those who knew about it, but to those who didn't know about it, it looked like I was trying to win his favor and start something by buying him ice cream. He wanted to turn me into a desperate pushover, Irene's Povav. I bit my lower lip and turned to look at me. He sent a charming smile my way and raised a brow, and Ethan asked him something which I didn't hear, but I was pretty sure he was asking Caden what he had up his sleeve because of the confident way Caden answered him. I gripped the credit card hard in my hand and looked ahead of me to the ice cream stall. Run, Irene, run! Your Caden is thirsty, he sent with a mocking emoji, and I began to walk very fast. Enduring things was easy. I just had to remember my mum who was sick at the hospital. That was all I needed to do. Hey, Fran called, but I ignored her, making it seem like I didn't hear her calling. I got to the ice cream stall and started to make my purchase. A jumbo size. Caden sent, Sorry, can I get a jumbo size instead? I asked, and the man stared at me for a while before shaking his head and giving me a jumbo-sized cone instead of the medium-sized one he had been pooling cream on. Already I could feel all eyes on me as I was the first out of everyone who had come in the entire school to get something with my money. I took the jumbo ice cream carefully and felt everyone's eyes following me as I made my way towards Caden, who was trying his best not to smile. Here, I said to him quietly, and gasps rang out through the crowd of students as they saw my gesture. Caden took it from me and discovered I had pushed his credit card towards him along with the ice cream. He smiled and skillfully returned it to me while pretending to hold my hand, thanking me, and he took his first bite of the ice cream. He murmured, looking at the ice cream, and I turned away. Thanks, Irene. He called after me, but I didn't turn away. Whispers and murmurs followed me everywhere, and I could see that my enemies were becoming more than enemies. They were willing to become villains, thinking I was daring to try to snatch Caden, all because he had asked me out to Halloween night. All this wasn't in our contract. I lamented in my thoughts, but who would hear me? We split up and took buses before we got to another hotel. I was surprised when I saw it WAD, a 5-star hotel. Wasn't it going to cost millions for about 200 students? Well, those 200 students had paid close to millions just for a school trip. The ones who couldn't get money from their parents had found ways to get money, and now they were enjoying it. I wondered what would have happened if the whole school actually paid, because we weren't even up to half of the actual population of the school, but then 200 students was a lot. Whatever hopes I had had about regrouping of roomies was dashed as the teachers shouted on top of their voices. Reunite with your roomies. Go with the wrong roomie, and I promise you, you'll be sent on the first plane home. I had to search for Jessica and the others, and when they saw me, they snorted out of jealousy. Well, it was better them. At least all they did was speak. I didn't want to get into the hands of roomies who'd actually hurt me. We settled in our rooms, which were even prettier than the last one had been. After we had all relaxed and eaten little snacks, we were all called out, and another regrouping started to take place. Someone suddenly pulled the back of my sweatshirt and I stumbled only to find it was Reese with his cap turned to the front. "You stay with us wherever we go," he whispered in my ear and dragged me to the spot where the triplets stood. Fran also came searching for me and was delighted to see me standing next to the triplets. We were grouped into 5 groups and about 40 students were in each group. For our tour of Paris, each group would go to different places as we were too much to look after, all at once, so they had arranged it so that every group would visit every place they had planned for us to visit. Our names were written and after that, we hung around the hotel in different places. Our group was taken to the swimming area and we were all given light clothes. "All right, let's have a swimming competition. At our first tour, which would be the day after tomorrow, I will sponsor the winner's breakfast," a teacher said, and everyone went crazy, pushing out people who knew how to swim. "Count me in," Reese said, and the girls went crazy with screams. The swimming began, and my mouth was open all the while, as Reese cut clean through the water like air, leaving a clear gow between him and his competitors, and when he won, I was among the people who screamed, although I stopped myself immediately and cleared my throat. More games were held for the day, and everyone was partying until the night when I got a message from Reese. "I want a grilled chicken in my room 409, he sent, and I sighed before taking out Caden's credit card from my pocket and slipping away from the crowd carefully so no one would see me and wonder how I got the money to buy such an expensive meal. I got the grilled chicken successfully and took the elevator to the floor with their room. I knocked gently, and then I heard laughter. "Come in," Reese said cheerfully, and I pushed open the door and walked in. The 3 of them were laughing at something on Reese's phone, and they looked up and saw me, then dispersed. "Oh, you're here," Reese muttered and took the package from my hands. This is quite nice, our personal room service lady," he commented, and Caden laughed out loud while Ethan smiled. Then suddenly we heard some noise. Loud noise of people laughing. "What's going on?" Ethan asked in alarm, and Caden had a guilty expression on his face. I think I invited some guys to our room," he said, scratching his neck while avoiding eye contact with Ethan. "What? When I was there? How would I explain my presence in their room when everyone else was having fun downstairs?" The sound of laughter came closer, and suddenly Ethan pulled my arm and led me into the wardrobe, and as the door opened, he himself came in and closed it. Oh shit, in such a tight space with Ethan? I'm going crazy. Urine's pov. I couldn't breathe because he was so close. His breath came soft and warm, tickling my hair and sending a million sensations through me. Even moving was too much for me to do because with each little move, my body grinded against his. The noise in the room doubled and Caden and Reese started to laugh and talk. Aren't they gonna leave? Do we stay? Stay till they're gone? I stuttered, my eyes roaming all around in the darkness. They should leave soon. "Why did you hide?" I asked and swallowed. "I don't know. I didn't want them to see me looking like I just killed a person," he replied, and a smile spread on my face. Ethan always liked to look cool and Koza liked to look cool and calm, so I bet he wasn't thinking straight when he realized they could find out who I was to them, which he didn't want, and since he couldn't hide his facial expression, he had decided to hide himself. "It's a bit uncomfortable," I murmured, trying to take my mind off the crazy places and events it was straying towards. "Oh," he let out softly and tried to adjust, but it only made it worse as he moved his arms and body trying to move. "Is this fine?" he whispered, and I shook my head. No, he asked in surprise. "Your hand on my chest." I stuttered out in embarrassment, and he immediately took away his hand which had been resting comfortably on my chest. "Oh God, I'm sorry. I thought he was saying," but bit off the remaining words. "Clothes," I completed, and a little chuckle escaped him. "Sorry, you're just too blunt." He apologized, adjusting again and making me feel him closer than ever. My body was heating up and I was finding it hard to breathe. One more moment and I might say something as stupid as, "Do you want a kiss to pass time?" I almost slapped myself as the unwanted thought came to mind. "Gosh," I whispered. I was going crazy stuck in a wardrobe with him. I was thinking insane things. My pure mind was straying to forbidden places. "What?" he asked. No, not you. Wait, is your phone with you? He asked, and I nodded before reaching into my pocket carefully to take it out. He turned it on, and its brightness almost blinded me. Send them out. He typed rapidly, and I was amazed at the speed with which his fingers moved. He waited, and after a while, a reply from Caden came back. Ethan, you think this is Urine? Ethan sent back, tapping on my phone's keyboard like he wanted to break the screen. Having fun? Isn't it 7 minutes in heaven? Caden teased, and I gave a little frustrated sigh. I couldn't hold being in that space any longer. Caden, he sent, and Caden sent a smiling emoji. Guys, let's go back to the pool. Whoever beats Reese will get the teacher's gift. Caden announced. The shouts increased before fading, and the last thing we heard was the closed door. Ethan breathed in relief and waited for some seconds before pushing the wardrobe door open. The room was empty, and on a stool was the remains of Reese's grilled chicken. Sorry about that. Ethan apologized, and I moistened my lips. It was sweet of him to apologize. It was something neither Reese nor Caden would ever do. I'll get going, I told him, and left the room hurriedly, walking carefully and being vigilant should I run into anyone. I got to my room and met Fran there talking with Margaret and Asha. Hey, I was searching for you everywhere. I thought you came to rest, she asked, and I shook my head. Call. Yeah, call. I was on a call with my mother. I lied, going to sit on my bed. You told me you didn't want to be friends with the triplets, yet you gifted Caden a jumbo ice cream. She pointed out, although I could tell she was questioning me. I was in a sour mood. Leaving my mum isn't exactly a happy thing. I saw Caden staring at the ice cream, and since he helped a lot with expensive clothes on Halloween night, I just thought I could show appreciation. I sold the clothes, I remarked, spilling more and more lies, and she fell for it. In 2 days' time, we all were ready for our visit to the first place of beauty in Paris. It was the lovely River Seine, which had been spoken of so many times. The other groups had gone to different places while we had our first tour at the River Seine. The evening was alive with our excitement, and I giggled with Fran as she was so crazy as to wink at cute French guys. Gosh, stop! It's embarrassing! I laughed as a French guy looked at her in shock when she winked at him. I'll never meet them again? So what? Come off it. You never know if you'll meet them again or not. I corrected her, but all she did was grab my hand and pull us into a run as we were lagging behind. Paris! She screamed, and people giggled at her excitement. Had I been the one, they would all have stared at me harshly. Run! The damn cruiser is leaving! Mr. Douglas, one of the teachers watching us, shouted, and we began to leave. Gosh, we're too late! I heard Jessica shout as she stared at her watch. Running was hard on me, and I slowed Fran down, although she wasn't complaining. We made it in time to the cruiser. The French men were talking rapidly in French, and Mr. Gregory stepped forward and exchanged some French dialogue with them, and they looked at us and broke into a smile, and I think everything was good. We boarded the cruiser and immediately went out to watch the sea. Wow! Fran exclaimed, leaning on the taffrail, and I did the same, only for someone to knock into me and, oh God! Ah! My scream rent the night. Urine's Pove. My scream was so loud that even the teachers, who were still busy sorting things out with the Frenchmen, were stunned. What happened to me? Well, it didn't warrant a scream, but I did anyway. The person who bumped into me almost pushed me over the taffrail. My feet were off the ground already. Well, let's not exaggerate. My feet were only inches from the ground, but still, the thought of being plunged into the cold, dark river and drowning due to being overweight was really scary. Fran, on her part, was so scared that she held on to me dearly, and everyone stared at us with disdain in their eyes. What's wrong? A guy asked, and I turned back to see he was the one who had accidentally bumped into me, and 2 other guys stood behind him, staring at me like I was an attention seeker. What's going on there? Miss Taylor, another teacher, asked as she came closer to the scene. I accidentally bumped into Urine here, and she screamed. The guy replied immediately, and she looked at the other guy. Is that true? She asked, and he nodded. We were just goofing around like everyone else, and Clayton bumped into her, and she screamed. He explained, and she turned to me. Did you get hurt? Did you almost go over the taffrail? She asked with concern in her large brown eyes, and I felt embarrassed as all eyes were on me. No. I replied in a little voice, and everyone started to murmur about me with disdain twinkling in their eyes. Hey, 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 keep it down! She snapped at them and turned back to me. So why did you scream? She asked, putting a hand on my shoulders. I was scared, I replied in a timid voice, holding my fingers together. You were scared? I didn't even bump into you hard. There's no way you could have fallen, Clayton retorted, and Miss Taylor silenced him with her look before turning on him. Why would you be so careless? Do you not know some people find it really hard to contain their shock when something happens drastically? If anything, you should be apologizing, not shouting or trying to pin the blame on her and make her feel bad when all she did was just to express her fear. Miss Taylor scolded, and at that moment I fell for her. Everyone went about doing their normal things when they saw that no blame was pinned on me. I'm sorry, Irene. Creighton apologized, and Miss Taylor patted my arm before going to meet the other teachers. On the river, music was played, and a large amount of money was to be given to students who danced the best. The girls went into a dancing spree and did all kinds of moves. Oh my Layla! Kill it! Fran cheered, and I clapped to the French musicians playing a charming French tune. The musicians were highly skilled, and I, who thought I'd be too shy to move, actually tapped my feet and clapped my hands. The Eiffel Tower was a beauty to behold, and my mouth was open all the while I stared at it. I also caught Ethan staring at it in admiration as the cruiser passed by it. He had a cap on, and it was turned to the back, and I could see the lights of the Eiffel Tower reflected in his beautiful eyes. It was like an eye candy, staring at Ethan, and it brought back memories of being stuck in the wardrobe with him so close to me. Just then, he turned, and as soon as our eyes met, I turned sharply and bumped into Fran. Hey! She exclaimed, and I immediately apologized. My heart was racing, and my back felt stiff. How was I to know if he wasn't still staring at me? We also saw the famous museum, the Louvre, as we sailed past, and I was thankful that the triplets paid for me to come on the trip, because I wondered if I'd ever get the chance to see such a beauty without them. Soon it was time for our 4-course meal, and we all sat as we were served salivating French food by the butlers. Expensive champagne was also served, and there was an excited chatter all around. My eyes met Reese's, and I immediately took them off and went down to my plate. A minute later, someone tapped my shoulder, and I turned to see it was Reese. I hadn't even started eating, and he wanted to ruin my mood? It was really unfair. I looked at Ethan and saw he was staring at Reese. Well, he wasn't the only one. Almost all the students were staring at us. You dropped your hairpin, he said, flashing another expensive hairpin in front of me. This one sparkled with all the lights, and it was crystal clear. It's not mine, I heard myself say, even though I knew his intention was for me to receive it and claim it as mine. Well, I couldn't do that because there was no explanation a girl like me could possibly give on an expensive hairpin. It's not? He asked, and I turned away. It's not, I said, although my lip was already trembling. I had just defied Reese and maybe embarrass him. I suddenly felt his hands in my hair, and I started only for him to take my hand away gently. Then I'm giving it to you, he said, clipping my hair behind my ear. Can anyone just tell me why he's actually doing this to me? Fran coughed in her champagne, but I didn't look at her. I heard you sold a lot to pay for the school trip and also borrowed some money, so I'm giving you this. You can choose to sell it. I'm sure it would make a little fortune, he told me with a little smirk. And just then a text came into my phone. Check it. Reese told me, and I bit my lip as my hand reached for my phone. I was boiling within. I was mad, but not at Reese nor Caden, who I was sure had sent the text. I was mad at myself for getting into such a mess. Go on your knees and thank him dramatically. Thank him in a way that will please me. If it doesn't please me, you'll do something worse. The text read, and I gritted my teeth. Wasn't being a slave enough? Why did they have to make me into a beggar? Yarine's Povey. I regretted meeting the triplets at that moment. If I'd never met them, then things wouldn't have become as bad as they were at the moment. I was sick of having to give in to their demands and embarrassing myself all the time, but what could I do? I couldn't wipe away the cruelty in their hearts. They were set to destroy me no matter what I did, and there was no way I could change that fact. Reese seemed to be getting impatient by the second, and I didn't want to get him mad because when he got angry, he wasn't reasonable. If only Fran knew that all this was due to her bugging me to introduce her to Reese. But then the truth remained that it wasn't Fran's fault. Reese and Caden had been looking for ways to punish me. I dropped my phone on the table and sank to my knees. I could see people shaking their heads as I held onto Reese's leg, and choked back laughter filled the table. "Thank you so much. I will never forget your kindness. I appreciate you so much. I really do," I said, desperately, and murmurs rose louder than ever. "She's so cheap. God, is she that desperate? The desperate as to embarrass herself in this matter? She's so willing to cling on to the triplets. Does she think they'll ever go for her? She had a pile of debt just for the school trip, yet she bought a jumbo ice cream cone for Caden? What a way to be noticed." So many remarks and snide comments flew my way, and the pictures and videos took place next. "I really have a lot of debt, and this would definitely pay it off. I will do anything you want me to do. I promise. Thank you so much." I continued, and from my peripheral view, I finally saw Caden nod. "That's fine," Reese said, trying to raise me up, and everyone started to praise him, just like he always liked. The trip wasn't my idea. They had paid for me, insisting that I needed to go with them as their slave when there were plenty of people who'd served them at the hotel of touring sites. Fran had later tried to cheer me up, and I had smiled all night, bottling my feelings up. Immediately we got off the cruiser, I asked to use the restroom, and the moment I was excused, I went as fast as I could. The fat, hot tears dropped down my cheeks, and I closed my eyes, trying to swallow the sobs, but they eventually escaped, and I sank to the ground, releasing all the pain I had gotten from the night. Even laughing had made it hurt more. Back at the hotel, I was called by Caden to get him an iced coffee when he could easily have called for room service, and I washed my face and waited for a while so my face could look less bloated from crying. The last thing I wanted was for them to know they had affected me by it. "Here comes the famous Irene," Caden announced when the door was opened by Reese. "Here it is," I said in a low voice as I passed his coffee to him. "This is the start. I'm willing to let you know how much I get annoyed by you and how far I'm willing to go to make you pay for being annoying," Reese told me as I turned to leave. I didn't say a word because there was nothing I could say that wouldn't land me in trouble. I left their room after letting him know I was right, and on my way, I passed by Ethan. He didn't spare me more than a glance. I bet he had been disgusted when I had begged Reese, not knowing that I had been forced to do it. The next day was a day of rest, so I stayed in my room all day reading a novel. Everyone else had fun lounging around the hotel, and the only thing that made me laugh all day was something that ended up flooding me with guilt. Another trending topic had taken over the school platform, and it was about Fran. Everyone had been playing in the snow, and she had been following after Reese everywhere he went, and ended up tripping and spilling her hot coffee on Reese, who was so mad. He pushed her to the ground, and the girls who were always jealous of whoever went close to the triplets jumped on her, calling her a clingy bat. I wasn't supposed to laugh. I guess I just laughed because she had finally seen Reese's true colors, and also because she who had been scolding me for embarrassing her the previous day had actually embarrassed herself, but then the guilt settled in. She hadn't planned on tripping, and Reese pushing her was really hard. After trying to put up good comments anonymously, I finally started sorting out the outfit I was to wear to the Louvre the next day. I picked out a large coat, a hoodie, a thick scarf, and boyfriend jeans to help fight against the horrible cold that had decided to attack again earlier that morning. How about I skip to the most horrible moment of my life the next day? This wasn't even the triplets' fault, it was someone else's, and I felt like disappearing right into the ground, because right there in the museum I broke something. "Irene's POV. What? Tandem? Like you mean the both of us jumping together?" I asked in shock, moving away from him. "The teachers are picking everyone in pairs, so they paired you and I," he informed me, and I turned to Miss Taylor. "Ma'am, I'm overweight and—" I started to say, pointing to the weight machine, but she put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You didn't exceed the weight limit. You'll do just fine. except you're not willing to do it. You know it is optional. Not everyone is doing it. Some are scared. It's just an activity to boost our spirits for Christmas. She assured me with a smile, but Reese put an arm around me. Oh, come on. This cutie isn't scared, he said with a smile. Did he just call me cutie? The last time I was clearly sure he had called me annoying. Are you interested? Miss Taylor asked, and Reese pushed my head slightly while pretending to touch my head warmer so it looked like I had nodded. All right. That's great, Miss Taylor said, beaming, and turned to the coordinators. Reese pulled me along, and no one even noticed us stuck together like glue because their excitement had gotten the best of them. The teachers started the pairing, and Fran happened to be partnered with Clayton. It turned out they also happened to be the first people to take the jump, and I watched her frown deepen by the moment as they were bound together with the gears. Don't touch me, she snapped, swatting away Clayton's hand when he tried to hold her in fear, and we all laughed. They were led to the very edge, and when Fran looked down, she screamed. You can do it, Jessica shouted as she jumped, sending her encouragement. Oh God, it's quite a height, Francesca remarked, trying not to look down. Let's do it. On the count of 1, 2, wait, you can't just let me fall like that, Fran shrieked, moving away from the edge, moving Clayton with her. At that point, everyone started to murmur and shout, Do the heck you have to do! It'll snow soon. You're wasting our time. Just take the jump. Do you think you're the only one bungee jumping today? All right, we'll do it, Francesca shouted back, not looking down, and Clayton nodded. I could see in her face that it was going to take an effort for her to jump. She seemed very nervous, but also unwilling to be the target of everyone's criticism. She closed her eyes tight and folded her lips before holding on to Clayton, who she had snapped at earlier not to touch her. 1, 2, 3. He counted, and on the count of 3, they jumped. Fran's scream rent the air mingled with Clayton's, and everyone cracked up, laughing and jumping from excitement. I tried to see further, but I didn't want to leave my spot so I wouldn't be noticed. I covered my mouth laughing and wondering if I could ever bring myself to fall. Finally, the screams were over, and we heard the echoes of Fran's short, desperate gasps to reach the ground quickly. They were lowered back gently onto an inflatable mat, and the moment Fran found her feet, she stumbled, and after seeing it was all over, she started to giggle. Hey, it's scary but fun. She screamed back up at us, and everyone began to ask her and Clayton questions on how it went. The jump is scary. My heart was in my mouth the whole time. If you have issues with your heart, don't try it. It feels like dying, she shouted, and it only fired up the excitement as the people were more than eager to see more reactions. The next people were pushed out, and it was another bout of laughter of screams as the two boys screamed like ladies. Who's going to go with Irene? What if the cord cuts? A girl asked, and everyone turned their heads searching for me, and when they saw me, they saw Reese. Even Caden and Ethan looked shocked to see Reese with me. Let them go next. A boy shouted, and everyone started clamoring for us to go next. Oh, gosh, no, I murmured. I wasn't ready to go yet. Reese took my hand and pulled me towards the men who would gear us up. Wait. Okay, wait. I'm not ready yet. Don't embarrass me. Then why did you pick me? You know I'm prone to embarrassing people, so why? I asked, but he wasn't having any of it. We were geared up, and instead of feeling so excited that I was that close with Reese, my heart was bumping in excitement, and I suddenly felt dizzy from my own fear. Oh my gosh! I screamed when I saw the height at which we were standing. People started bringing out their phones, giggling and capturing me, the highlight of the day. I started breathing fast, and Reese took off my head warmer and scarf, putting them together with his and throwing it to Caden for safekeeping. Okay, wait, I want to apologize. I know I've been bad, and I know it's a lot, but please, I do not want to go down there. I begged desperately, wondering if he'll change his mind if I begged. Reese moved us to the edge, and when I saw my foot was almost down, I screamed. I looked at Reese and saw to my dismay that he was smiling, not frowning. We're just going to make a big jump. You sure like to be the star of every day, Irene. Reese commented, and I closed my eyes. Okay, wait. I will jump, but you have to be patient. You have to wait for me. Wait, what if the cord cuts? They measured my weight, but they didn't measure ours together. We don't know yet if it'll hold. I told him desperately, hoping he'd give it a thought, but instead he laughed. We live to die, he said instead and pushed me before I was even ready. Bam! Urine's POV. The fear of being pushed without being ready swallowed me whole, and my heart was right in my mouth. The feeling of falling felt like all my insides were about to leave me. Reese was shouting in excitement while I screamed in fear, holding on to him for all I was worth. I wanted to get to the end immediately, but the fall was excruciatingly slow. Frankly speaking, falling felt like dying, and I had it in that the cord wouldn't hold our weight and was going to snap. Already the cold from the wind and at the speed at which we were plunging had turned my lips white and frozen my face, leaving my ears and nose in a horrible pink. After feeling like I had screamed my throat out raw, I began to cry and call for help. Help! The cord won't hold, I shouted, hoping they'd take me seriously, but as I fell further, and the faces became smaller and distant, I could still see the laughter on every face. I couldn't get mad because I also had laughed when other people had been falling. Finally, the rope bounced back up and we were lowered back into the inflatable mat gently. When I got down, I didn't even bother with the gear. I cried. Why was I crying? It was over, wasn't it? It was just that the fear of falling had been so scary and terrible for me. It had eaten me whole, and I had hated it. What the heck is wrong with you? Reese asked. Although he was smiling as he took off the gear, he was definitely all giddy and excited from the jump. You were paired up with Reese? Fran asked me when Reese had moved back a few feet so he could watch the others falling and laugh at them too. Yes, I answered as I finally sat up, trying to take off the gear. How did it happen? Were you standing next to him or? It just happened. I cut in, not in the mood to be questioned by her on the triplets. My tears had already dried on my face, so there was nothing to clean, but I still ended up trying to wipe my face. You're just getting luckier each day. You're always with the brothers and making advances to them, she remarked as I got away from the inflatable mat. I didn't make any advances, I told her dully, walking further away from the mat. Jump, Caden, jump! Reese called, and I looked up to see it was Caden and Margaret who were jumping next. Then what was it with the ice cream stuff? The hairpin? You telling me Reese was a bad guy because he didn't apologize to me after pushing me? She asked, following me, and I felt so suffocated as she refused to back away. Just stop, okay? I'm not stopping you from hanging out with them. I just need you to give me my space. Why does it feel like you're watching my every move, Francesca? It's like you're stalking me and just trying to put a leash on me. I told her as Caden, and Margaret's screams of excitement rent the air as they fell. What is wrong with you, Urine? These days you're just so cranky and totally not cool to be around. You hang around the triplets, then tell me you don't want to be friends with them. You keep saying and doing different things. She complained, still following me and standing with me when I stopped walking. Okay, let's just say I want to be friends with them. Okay, and don't feel it strange when you see me around them. That's it. I want to be friends with them too, I told her, hoping it made things easier. Then Caden walked up to us and dumped my head warmer on my head rashly, but putting the scarf around my neck somewhat affectionately before going to give Reese his. I understood that Fran felt threatened since she liked them, but what could a person like me do? Could I actually be threatening? All through the day, my mood was sour. Christmas gifts were exchanged and I got none, not even from Fran. Back in the hotel, a grand breakfast had been prepared, and everyone ate as much as they wanted to, talking and laughing as they munched different delicacies. A dance choreography was performed, and the girls who danced it were so beautiful that I couldn't stop staring at them. They were exactly what I wished to be, slim, pretty, sexy, and good dancers with confidence that burst through them as brightly as the sunshine. A comic Christmas playlet was also acted out, and despite my being glum, I couldn't help but laugh at the funny characters. Another round of snacks was served, and the students pushed the teachers to rest, telling them they had done their best, and so the teachers went to continue their Christmas elsewhere, while we moved into another activity, which was confession time. We were all to write a confession in a sheet of paper, but with changed handwriting so we wouldn't be found out, and submit it in the pile of papers randomly. The papers would be shuffled and then shared so a person got to read another person's confession. I thought about what to write in my paper because I know I didn't have much going on in my life at the moment. "What would you write?" Fran asked, craning her neck to see what I wanted to write, but I immediately picked up my blank paper and hid it away from her. "Oh, come on. Is this how you want things to be?" she asked, and I blushed. "Let's tell each other later," I suggested, poking her in the arm, and she smiled. "You must tell the truth, okay?" "No lies," she insisted, and I giggled. "No, I wouldn't lie about a silly confession, would I?" I countered, rolling my eyes, and she smiled. We were served another round of drinks and snacks, and even though I knew I had had enough and that it was best to stop, I didn't. I couldn't, and I continued to eat and eat everything and anything that was placed in front of me. We started to write our confessions, but for a while I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to write, whereas everyone had already gotten started on their confessions, looking around to be sure no one was watching them. Even the triplets looked a little serious. Ethan was calm and concentrated. Caden had a nasty smile on his face, while Reese had a serious look on his face that didn't suit him at all. It looked so awkward, and I had the weird feeling that he was actually writing something real, but in seconds, he was done with it. And a smile similar to Caden's spread on his face, and that confirmed that he had been writing something mischievous and had been concentrating his all on it to make it nice. He leaned over to check on what Caden was writing, and the both of them burst into a fit of laughter, hitting each other. When Caden saw what Reese had written, he put a hand to his mouth, smiling nastily, then hit him on his head, and they began to laugh and hit each other, distracting the girls who were still busy loading their confessions onto their sheets of paper with their handsomeness. And just then, what I wanted to write came into mind, and it was one that lent my face a nasty smile, just like the one on Reese's and Caden's faces. Fran caught me smiling and broke into a wide grin. "You look like you're writing about your crush," she remarked, and I turned red. "No way. What silly crush?" I retorted immediately, and she smiled even wider. "Denial." When denial is strong, it's usually the opposite. She told me, hitting her pen on my head. "No way. It's not my crush. Do I look like I can have a crush? Girls like me do not have crushes," I said immediately, but she shook her head. "What's wrong with girls like you having crushes? It's totally fine." She shot back with a smile, and it made me smile too. "Well, I'll let you know what I wrote when we're done," I told her, and she smiled. In a few more minutes, people were all submitting their papers, hiding it under other papers so the next person to submit wouldn't figure out the last person who wrote. I did the same, and so did Fran, and for the first time that night, I felt excited. I was eager to let the class hear my confession. When everyone was done submitting, the papers were shuffled once more and shared. I was given my confession paper and folded it, as the rule was not to open it until it was our turn. The first person opened her paper and giggled. It says, "Fuck all the girls for Christmas." She read, and everyone laughed, wondering who wrote those. A lot of confessions were shared, but the ones I'm about to tell you are the most important. You can't expect me to read out 40 confession, can you? The first one that struck me was a red-haired girl's confession. "Oh my God, what am I seeing?" she asked with wide eyes. Now this is a real confession. It says, "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have Urini on my bed spending the night with me." Gosh, the girl read, and the girls all screamed, giving disgusted reactions. "Hey," Francesca said, hitting my arm in disbelief. I was dumbfounded. How would someone in their right mind write that? "God, can we all take a minute to guess who wrote this shocking confession?" Maria asked with wide eyes. "Clayton?" someone suggested, and Clayton's eyes went wide. "What the hell was that for? Why would I want urine on my bed?" he exclaimed, pausing before he pronounced my name. It only made me feel embarrassed as everyone debated on who could have possibly written about it. The next confession about me was from the girl next to me. It says, "Oh geez, how I'd love to turn Urine into a punching bag. She looks extra fat today." The girl read and burst into laughter. "If I can hang her on the ceiling and start punching all day, I promise you girls you'd love my abs." The girl finished, and everyone burst into laughter, and for the sake of not looking like the fool, I had to smile along, even though it wasn't funny but hurtful. All right, that was a funny one. Let's move on, please. Irene, you're up next. Reese motioned and I opened my confession. My heart thudded instantly as I recognized the handwriting. It was mine. I had gotten my own confession. My hands began to shake as it was all messed up. It would be obvious because it would sound too natural. I cleared my throat and glanced at everyone before reading. Every time I pray with all my heart that Reese and Caden would suddenly have their legs broken and amputated and lay on a hospital bed so they won't be able to move. I read, trying to sound monotone, and I could see people folding their lips, trying not to laugh. The confession was funny in itself, but laughing was like invoking the wrath of Reese and Caden, and from the way they stared at me, I suddenly had cold feet. It seemed like they knew I was the one who had written it, and just then, my body decided to make things worse for me. My tummy churned, and the girl next to me turned to me. "Did you hear that?" she asked, and I furrowed my brows, acting innocent. "Hear what?" I asked, and just then, something hot passed out from me, from my anus. "Never mind," she told me, and I stayed rooted to the spot until another one came silently free. "Geez, what's that smell?" The guy next to the girl who had asked me a question asked, and everyone began sniffing. Gosh! It was only a matter of time before the source was discovered. Irene's POV. I really do not know if you have ever had the feeling that your high school life was crumbling. As the gas continued to leak out of my turning and boiling stomach, everyone began to notice that the cold air was beginning to smell funky. "Oh, geez, what did this person eat?" a girl asked as she pressed her napkin to her face. Looking at my face, I really looked like a girl in trouble, and I didn't know how to change that expression. "Are you kidding me?" Reese blurted out as he stood from the blanket on which he sat. "This smells like yours," Francesca whispered to me, and I immediately shook my head, but she had already caught on. "Irene, let's move out. This is thick," she exclaimed, grabbing my hand as she stood and started to pull me with her. Everyone else separated, trying to get a sniff of the cold air once again instead of my toxic gas. Irene took me far away, and I squeezed my face. "My stomach hurts," I told her. "I ate too much." "Shouldn't you use the toilet?" she asked as she turned to the students who were still making a fuss about my bombs. "They will notice that I'm gone, and when I return, they'll know that I was the one who did all that smelly stuff," I said, rejecting her idea with a look of doom of my face, and she laughed. "Wait a sec," she told me and walked towards them. "Geez, this is a lot. I literally can't breathe," she said, using her arm to cover her nose. "Who the hell is that? I'd like to give a slap on their face. Didn't they learn that it's manners to excuse yourself when about to pollute the air?" A fierce-looking girl blurted out in anger. "You know what? A 30-minute break. I call for break." Fran shouted naturally and left, shaking her head while I tried to blink and, in the least, act like the smell of my own fart was horrible to me. Fran returned and linked her arm with mine. "Oh, what would I do without you?" I cried softly, and she burst into laughter. "I know, right? Gosh, that was some scary stuff. Hurry to the restroom," she said, suddenly pushing me away in the middle of her sentence. I ran as fast as I could into the hotel building and up the stairs, then walked across the lobby, hoping no one would also walk into the hotel and see me in a hurry. When I got to the elevator, I was really pressed to go, and I seemed to bloat with every passing minute. I started to blow air from my mouth so I wouldn't mess myself up. What would I have done if Fran hadn't caused that distraction? Would I suddenly have needed to get up and run? I really couldn't begin to see what I really would have done without her. When I got to my room, I pushed the key into the lock rather hastily, but luckily it didn't give me a problem. I pushed the door open and dashed into the toilet, pulling down my clothes, and in the process my phone fell to the floor, but I didn't care. What made me care was the message that came in at the time. "I need you now. Being late attracts punishments." That was from Reese, and when I saw it, I screamed in frustration. "What the heck is wrong with you all?" I shouted, but there was nothing I could do. I was forced down on the toilet seat, and in that same second, I blasted it with a weird sound. "Oh gosh," I muttered softly. We were all seated on the large blankets on the snow once more, and no one suspected me as the bomb maker. They all sniffed the air and giggled about how horrible it was. I also giggled with Fran until I remembered I hadn't gone to Reese. It made me choke in the water I was drinking, and I tried not to look in his direction. I could easily pretend I hadn't seen it. Yes, that was way better than letting him know I saw it. "Where did our confessions stop?" Maria asked, and we continued from where we had left off. But somehow I couldn't help but feel Reese and Caden suspected me seriously on the confession I had read, which was obviously mine. "All right, our very last confession. That's mine. So let's go." It reads, "Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But every time I see her, I want to talk to her. I do not understand what sort of attraction this is, as it has never happened to me in all the years which I've known myself. Could it be mere attraction, or lust, or something else? Something much more?" She read, and applause rang out. Now that sounded like a real confession. It sounded really troubled. A guy next to her said, "This handwriting is a little familiar. Look at the neat lines. The person tried to change it, but all the familiar strokes are still there." He continued as he pointed to letters on the paper. "That's right. I think this guy is in our grade. Oh my, who's hopelessly in love with a girl in our grade?" The girl asked, and everyone began to pass the paper around in excitement. "Wow, it actually sounds like a poem," Caden remarked, and everyone laughed. "Who's the lucky girl?" Reese asked as he studied the paper next. I craned my neck, trying to see even though I wasn't close to him, but so doing, I and Reese locked eyes, and I immediately averted mine upon remembering his text message. The note was passed from hand to hand with loud debates which made people burst into laughter. Someone even had the nerve to suggest Caden, who burst into uncontrollable laughter. "Just tell me, can you imagine me writing that?" he asked, and he and Reese cracked up. Even Ethan was finding it hard to keep his cool, as his head, which was on Caden's shoulder, shook with his laughter. In minutes, the confession was over, and they moved on to the next activity, which was a game of some sort. When the name of the game was mentioned, everyone squealed, and I looked around in dismay, wondering what it was all about. "What is it?" I asked Fran, but she was so busy chattering in excitement with a girl who had freckles on her face. "I brought them." Maria squealed and brought out long candy sticks from a bag, which made everyone go crazy. I tugged on Fran's clothes to ask her what exactly was going on, but a group of boys had joined in their discussion, and I wasn't ready to be ridiculed by them, so I kept quiet, deciding to wait until the game started. They played a weird set of games on an FNL that required mixing people's names up, and that game had everyone crouching and screaming when a pair of names were produced. I got tired of craning my neck and sat back, waiting for them to finish whatever it was they were doing patiently, and minutes later, loud screams rang through the air, and I saw most of the girls stare at me with that look of envy I had seen on their faces most of the time. Seriously? What did I do this time? "You're partnered with Ethan," Fran squealed with a hand on her mouth, and I looked at the paper, squinting my eyes. Truly, I had been partnered with Ethan, but for what? Why were they so jealous that I was partnered with Ethan? It wasn't like we were going to have to kiss or something. Yeah, exactly 5 minutes after I thought about that, the game started, and I saw that it wasn't kissing, but was a lot like kissing. My heart rate sped up as a girl and a guy put the opposite ends of a stick candy into their mouths and started chewing on it, moving closer as they did so. The couple that had the smallest candy stick before it was broken won a cash prize that would be donated by the students. I couldn't help glancing at Ethan, who remained calm by my side while, holy shit, I was freaking out. What if we kissed? What if our lips touched slightly? Ah! It was agony to think of it. My heart was beating drumsticks out of my chest, and I began to fear that it would spoil my day. In a little while, I and Ethan were called to chew our candy, and by then it felt like I would explode. We sat opposite each other, and he held one end of the stick candy in his mouth, pushing the other towards me, and I moved closer and covered the other end with mine. Already I was sweating. We were too close. Closer than I liked, and it brought memories of my time with him in the wardrobe. "Start!" Maria cried in excitement, and everyone paid even more attention than they had paid the others who had done the game before us. Ethan moved slowly but steadily with his eyes fixed on mine. Why was he staring at me? Did he wish to see me explode? "Urine, eat up!" Margaret snapped, and others began to clamor for me to do some of the eating instead of leaving Ethan to do it all. I took my first bite and felt Ethan's slow breath coming on my face. It was getting really uncomfortable for me as images of kissing scattered across the walls of my mind. Ethan moved closer to me also, and in seconds, we were inches from kissing. I finally met his eyes, and he raised a brow as if asking me if I wasn't going to pass out the moment he covered my mouth with his. I swallowed and chewed on. The whole place crashed into silence as every breath was drawn, waiting for the big kiss that wasn't going to happen. Ethan moved closer, and some girls pushed their hands to their mouths, wondering if it was really going to happen. I made my tiniest move, and our noses touched. My heart was racing, and it seemed to be beating all through my body. To be honest, I wanted to kiss him at that moment. My eyes lingered on his lips, the way they looked so soft and outlined. I wondered what it would feel like to kiss Ethan. I began to wonder if he was a soft kisser or a hard kisser. I began to wonder if he would taste like candy, and where a kiss would take us if we ever happened to kiss. "Oh my God, Urine," I exclaimed in my mind. Why couldn't I think straight whenever I was that close to Ethan? Then Ethan made the big move, and I saw his mouth open slightly to cover mine. Not to eat the little candy in front of us. He was going to brush his lips with mine. I closed my eyes tight, and everyone would think I was preparing to kiss him, only for them to see me break the candy. I opened my mouth in time to see him let a very little stick of uneaten candy fall, and I caught it in my palms, which made everyone scream in surprise. Ours was the smallest so far, and I knew most of them had expected ours to be the longest because they felt Ethan would be too disgusted to come that near to me. Everyone cheered, and the games continued. It felt like I was on an electricity buzz the whole time as others tried to make their stick candies as small as ours, and it was all going well until another message popped on my phone. "You didn't see this?" Reese sent, referring to the previous message he had sent. "Come now, behind the hotel." He sent, and it was then I noticed that he was no longer at the gathering. I rolled my eyes and excused myself. He was waiting at the back of the hotel, sitting on a pavement. "My lovely slave who dared stand me up, come here and wipe my shoes," he said, staring at me like he was daring me to refuse him. Already, I had a nice evening, so I wasn't willing to spoil it. I walked to him, bent, and used the edge of my clothes to wipe his spotlessly white sneakers. "Wipe my trousers next," he told me, pointing to a red stain on his trousers, and I cleaned it obediently until I saw something that made my jaw fall. Standing behind a wall was a face staring at us in shock. It was a girl.